Wastelanders! Our challenger, racing for freedom, Mouse. And now, our undefeated champion, Nitro! Last man standing wins. 3, 2, 1, strike! I think she's showing off. Wow, what a move! Oh, I don't think she can take much more. Headed straight for each other. Nitro's hit for the first time ever. Oh, that's it. He's going in hot. Yeah! Game over, Mouse. Not looking good for Mouse.
Hello, artists and animators, and welcome to the Animation Trends event. Chris Copeland's screen credits includes directing on Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts, as well as storyboarding on Invincible, the Guardians of the Galaxy animated series, and The Witcher, Nightmare of the Wolf. We invited Chris onto our live stream to discuss his storyboarding process, as well as a scene which he storyboarded for Invincible. So, Chris, welcome to the Animation Trends event.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. I'm always excited to meet up with you guys at Toon Boom, as you know. It's always exciting for me. You guys are such a pivotal part of my everyday, literally, definitely my career, that it's always amazing to come and talk with you guys and share a storyboard. I'm excited.
Chris, that's amazing. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the work that you do, particularly everything that you do around superheroes. So I need to ask you, how did you get involved in Invincible, and what did your role look like during the day-to-day of its production?
Yes, my involvement with Invincible was crazy. What ended up happening? I was directing on Kipo actually at the time when they reached out to me, and Invincible as a comic book was such a pivotal part of my comic book loving experience growing up. When that book came out, Cory Walker's art, Robert's sense of storytelling, and then eventually Ryan Ottley's art and storytelling. It was such a huge part of my creative career back when I was trying to break into comic books. And my comic book adventure ended after I was just like, I can't. The way that these guys were putting pages down a day, I'm like, man, the way that I draw, how long it takes me, there's no way the comic industry was going to work for me. And then even in terms of style, I just knew that animation was going to be the thing that I would end up, latching my career onto. And so it was crazy, directing on Kipo, getting a phone call from the guys at Skybound and Amazon and going like, hey, we want you to come onto the show and help us get this thing going. It was a very exciting time because, again, creatively, I've been pulling from this comic book forever. And so my thing was, hey, if you let me bring my brother on, we'll jump in immediately. And so we were a part of the team way early days, just as the show was getting established and figuring out how the designs could work in terms of animation, and working with Robert and Cory and really just figuring out how do you take such an iconic comic book and turn it into an animated series. What are going to be the restraints? What are going to be the parameters? How far can we push something? Where can we sort of pull back on certain things in order to really make it a great cinematic experience? And so that was like the early year, the first year of the show, and it was really exciting. hard as all can be. It was tough because you're figuring out, you're talking about a comic with such scale. You're going like, all right, how do you do that in animation? How do you sustain?
Right. There's interstellar travel. There's interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
And then it's like slice of life too.
Yes. Yeah. It's like aliens and a teenager. Oh, and they're all one. And you're just going like, okay, how do we navigate that? And it was amazing telling that story and being a part of telling that story, because you're attracted to the Peter Parker-esque story of it all, right? He's just this kid, Mark. And the second that he goes to throw the garbage bag into the garbage can at work, thus begins this amazing Spider-Man, elevator. Yeah, where you're just going like, oh my God, like he's found that thing. And so it's this middle of the road sort of experience, and then it is, oh my God, I'm a superhero, and then, oh my God, my dad is here to destroy the planet Earth, right? Like, oh, like, so there's just so many different scales that you're messing with there and trying to figure out how do you make that approachable for an audience. And to the surprise of everyone except maybe Robert, to the surprise of everyone, it was such a huge hit amongst demographics that you never would have thought. You know what I mean? Like, I have some of my cousins who are just like, y'all don't read comic books at all, but I'm watching this show and I can't stop. I'm just like, yo, that's amazing. And it's really dope to be a part of something like that, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's also worth talking a little bit about like the tone of Invincible. Invincible's an interesting show because there are brutal things that happen, but it doesn't feel grimdark.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's that contrast. I think the juxtaposition of the comedic and the brutal, and then right in the middle is the humanity, right? And I think it is this balancing act that you're doing. I think when you see these characters, I don't know, there's something about comic books of old where, they're taking the crook and they are, they catch them in the act of doing their bad deeds. And then they arrest them and they hand them over to the cops, and the cops take them to, prison. And there's something about that where you're like, yo, Superman, homie was pointing a gun at an old lady. Can you punch that dude's arm off? Like, can you just do? And I think Robert in the writing is sort of like with Invincible, where he's going like, these characters are heroes, but they will do whatever it takes to be heroic because they have the powers to do that. And so then it's just them walking the line of humanity or lack thereof, where you're like, are they going to tear this dude's arm off for real? And it's like, well, we needed to, so yes, we're going to do it. You sort of want to see that. You want to see the hero do the big, muscular, strong, powerful things. And I think that part of ourselves, maybe it's a little dark, maybe it's a little morbid, that wants to see that. But then we have the scapegoat of like, well, it's a hero and he's saving the day. Yes, he had to throw a person through a wall to do it. But that's the way that he saves the day. There's something humanely, weirdly honest about that I think we sort of are like, yeah, it's about time that we start to see the bad guys really get it bad from the heroes, and vice versa in certain situations. But Robert never shies away from honesty, brutal honesty and transparency with the characters, and sort of like them going, here's what we need to do. And when you see that played out, it's for the gore fans, it's super gratifying. I have never been a gore guy. Like, I've never been a dude who's like, I don't even like scary movies that much. But being on this show and sort of exploring different ways to do that in a way that still felt grounded and didn't feel like it was just, extra. That was super fun and exciting. And seeing fans respond to that. The end of episode 1, man. I mean, come on. Like,
yeah. So Invincible is definitely a show where you introduce a lot of heroes really quickly, and maybe don't see them again for the rest of the series. So why don't we talk a little bit about the sequence from Invincible that you shared on Instagram and how you approach the scene?
Yeah, absolutely. Am my screen recording right now? Is it showing my screen?
Yeah, we're able to see the screen.
Excellent. Yeah, so this was early days, and at the time we were getting storyboards back from we had a team in Canada, and we were getting storyboards back from the team there. There was just a certain tone and an identity for these last few shots that I really, I was very excited to set up and sort of go like, let's make sure that they feel like the things that we're nodding to. This character, like we are clearly, he's a nod at Batman, right? Like there's something cool and interesting about that hero in the Dark City. And so this sequence was one that we had gotten back from the storyboard artist, and it was just missing certain big heroic elements. And so when I saw it, I said, let me take it and sort of finesse it and add in some of those big, brooding sort of heroic moments. And so when we opened up on it, I'm pretty sure I've told you before, I work in Google SketchUp, so we have 3D models built. For this sequence, you can take the filter and the way that they're finished and add a like sketchy line to it. I wanted to add the sketchy line to this. I don't know why. And so we're trucking in. I'm big on, like cinema and the camera and wide shots and foreground elements and things of that nature. I'm really big on that type of stuff. I always want to immerse the audience in a sequence and make them feel like the emotional extremities of it. And so this shot here,
you want that multiplaning, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you can see it here. That was not in the 3D model. That was a layer that I drew. What exactly are those buckets or whatever? I don't know.
Pipes or something. Yeah.
Something. It gives
a texture.
Yeah, that's all it is you get the depth of it. And so they're cracking this door open. And then, this guy's like, really, I want to, is it necessary for me to like, pace it out? No, I could have noted it up. But again, whenever someone is looking at a storyboard that I'm doing, I want to try to get them as close to the cinematic experience as possible. So he cracks the door open. And right as he does that, the other guy who's with him is like immersed in something that's freaking him out. And this was the thing that I said, this is the moment. This is where we're going to see this hero now. So he's taking a look at him. And the other guy's like, what are you doing? And he just points at something off screen. And you can see here, you see in my 3D model, we'll put the 3D person in the model just for like, as you're building your model, you want to make sure the scale is there, fun little trick there. So then, dramatic shot of the hero. He stands up and we see that he's placed his little, magnet, attractors onto the thing. Stands up, has his line. So I forget exactly what his dialogue was. It's been so doggone long, but something. I'm the hero. I'm here. I love. By the way, I love the design of this because it's Batman, but with one bat cowl in the middle. It's just my favorite. Thank you, Corey Walker. So then he jumps off, and yeah, here again, like now it's on. This guy's heading toward the bad guys, and guy swings at him, bow, gut punch, then takes the legs out. And then this one was fun. Again, unnecessary, but I just felt like it was actually necessary. I wanted to do some cool slow-mo. He throws the handcuffs onto the guy and takes off. Boom, now we see what the magnets are for. And again, as I'm storyboarding, my brother and I, and I'm going to tell you one thing that I'm resisting right now. This storyboard is, I think, that's 2019. So this is 4 years old. I'm resisting every urge in my body to not note this thing up and like change some things. But, early on, remembering that I set up, this element here. And that's something really important, right? Like,
so you understand why things are happening during the action scene. It's not just things happen. It's things happen because it's set up.
Exactly. Nothing is for nothing is the concept. And so for me, everything that I do in a storyboard, I'm pacing it out and thinking about, okay, am I going to go back to that? It's you're setting up the gun, you got to shoot it. And so, by the time he jumps and puts the handcuffs on him, And the audience is going, what the heck is that? And even he's going, what the heck is that? And then they're going, oh, the thing we set up. Boom. And then they yank him off and attach him to the doggone thing. Cut back to this guy who is still stunned. And this was one of my favorite parts. This wasn't in the script, but per inspiration from Robert Kirkman, thank you. I said, man, if he's a hero and he's like, I'm going to take this guy and throw him against the wall, he's not going, I'm going to throw him against the wall to then go in and question him. He's going, I want to throw him against the wall and end him. Like, I want him to just go to sleep. And so I was just like, you know what would be great is I know how these signs are attached to these doors. So for him to throw him so hard that it knocks the sign off of the door, I said, that guy is dead. So by the time we go back out, you know, he slumps down and we just see him casually throw the cuffs onto the guy, who then, you know, smack connects over to the same wall. And so you can see these drawings here look very different than mine. These were the drawings done by the original storyboard artist, who did a great job with it. It was just me adding in this extra texture of seeing a hero do a heroic thing. For those who have watched the show, you'll understand why it was important for me to show how powerful this character is against these two people. Because what ends up happening to him, this hero, at the end, you need to have an understanding of how powerful Omni-Man is, right? Like, now you're going to go, the way that this guy just dismantled these two crooks like nothing, and then to see the way that Omni-Man dismantles him, it gives you an idea of how powerful Omni-Man is. And so again, nothing being for nothing, everything is to make a statement. So then he approaches these guys and is now going through the questioning. Again, this is the part that the other storyboard artist did. He did a really cool thing too with talk about a heroic ending. So he interrogates the guys before he gets the call to head out. He goes and, you know, jumps off of the rooftop and boom, you see his little speeder come in and grab him. I just thought that was a really cool moment and definitely wanted to keep that. But that was what a lot of my presence was on the show in those early days is, you know, continuing to define and refine the visual and going like, how do we make sure that this thing feels like consistently grand in scale and things of that nature. And boards like this where there was a lot of boarding things like that and adding in textures here and there for every episode. My brother and I would do these type of boards for it. It was really great.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about the scene too is that it introduces a character like Batman. But you don't go through like the whole origin story of his parents in crime alley, the pearl necklace being torn and scattered on the ground, the gunshot, like 11-year-old boy just like standing there, the training. We show in media res this character relying on finesse and gadgets to take on two people at once.
Absolutely. And you know what's cool about that point is I think the second that you see this, I mean, if you look at the way that right, so sort of like brooding on a pillar, like you know immediately, okay, this is a Batman character. Exactly. Already we are using real estate. It's already established real estate. And so now I'm immersing you in an idea, right? It's not riffing off of the Batman thing. It's immersing you in the idea that Batman real estate is already established. And that's what was always cool about Invincible. I think about any comic book or superhero story now is how much of that other real estate can we use to build on? And when I say build on, I mean really create a new experience for the audience, right? Like, how can we take some of these stories and concepts and origin story ideas, how can we use those that as a, you know, the audience gets it now. They get it. They understand the jig is up, right? But now how do you turn the audience's expectations into a fun experience, a new experience based on what they already know or believe about the superhero origin story or the superhero story in general? That's that anti-hero thing about Invincible that's really cool. It's turning Superman, Omni-Man, into this villain in a way that impacts someone, impacts the people around them. It's one of those great, like, that's amazing storytelling in a really cool way. So to be able to take the Batman side of that, and me being a Superman guy growing up, to be able to see Omni-Man, Superman, beat the life out of Batman here, it was one of those, like, there's some gratification in that for me. But it was super fun, really, really fun storyboard to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's the old problem of like, how do you do a fight with Superman versus Batman? If Batman wins, like traditionally, like that's a story, right? Like that is someone overcoming a struggle. If Superman wins, that's not really a story. That is a like footnote, you know, that is a bug against a windshield. In a way, that's kind of a problem.
Yes.
And I think that the way that like this approaches that is a very different answer than what you see in a lot of media.
Absolutely.
So as someone who has like storyboarded on productions that had both Superman and Batman in them, how did that experience, was it something that came into play when you were working on Invincible? And was it maybe different from your experience on projects with legacy superheroes?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, the Superman, Batman, although my early days at Warner Brothers, they made me who I am as a storyboard artist. And so, you know, when you're storyboarding something, I mean, and you can see a lot of I'll even go to some of the panels that in particular, a lot of these very rough drawings and posing these different things out, you know, I could easily take, and the layout achieved that. I could easily take this and turn that into a drawing of Nightwing or of Batman and that all comes from those early days at Warner Brothers. It really built in me a comfort with the shapes and the body style and the movement of the characters from the DC universe. Those things set me up to be comfortable in a setting like this where you're doing this cool action moment. The difference in it is the restraint was removed on Invincible. It was literally like, no, we're gonna tell the human story by way of all the violence, all the blood, all of the heartbreak, the heart-wrenching letdowns of the dad and his son. Like we're gonna tell that human story through this. The Warner DC stuff, it was, we're going to tell the Batman, we're going to tell the Superman, we're going to tell the Wonder Woman story. You know, those characters at this point of their existence, you're telling their story. You're not really trying to cast broad appeal with those guys much anymore, especially not in the animated movies. We were really sort of taking some of the best-selling graphic novels and going, what does that look and feel like in an animated platform, and doing that? There was rarely any deviation from those graphic novels. You were just literally sort of going one for one with whatever animation methodology you could, which was super fun, and it trained me for something like Invincible that then goes, okay, we're gonna do that, but we really want to zoom in on that human experience. We really want to zoom in on the dramatic nature of this thing and really make the people feel for Mark in a way of a son and his dad who really let him down. So in the emotional as well as in the action sense, we got to really push everything that we did at Warner Brothers to a level 10 and try some really, really brutally honest things that I think landed really well with the audience, which is always gratifying. But that's sort of my perception of having worked in both of them and what one did for the other. Which I love. I love it. And now, of course, in my mind, I'm always like, man, if I could go back and not even go back, but if I were to take a DC character now and build a movie around them, what would I do with them, having traversed Invincible and the DC stuff, and something even like Kipo. How do those things contribute to what I would do now with the DC hero? It's always an interesting little thought that I have.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing about superheroes, especially the legacy superheroes, is how much room there is to reinterpret them or put them in different situations, tell different stories.
Yeah.
They are characters that I think are very versatile in certain ways.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I talk about as an African American creative director, I talk about diversity in storytelling, and I think what the mistake that can be made often when talking about inclusivity and diversity in storytelling, I think the mistake that can be made often is relegating it only to the optics, right? And going, oh, that person has darker skin, and so, oh yeah, they're Haitian or whatnot, and you're like, okay, fine, but I think you miss a very important opportunity if you relegate it to only the optics. I think if you think about a character and you think about cultural inclusivity, taking and I might have laid this illustration out to you before, but it's like if I took the Alien franchise and I replaced Sigourney Weaver with Regina King, right? Regina King as a Black woman is going to make a different decision in certain areas of that movie than Sigourney Weaver did, because culturally they have two different life experiences. So now all of a sudden, when you're thinking about that, what we're saying is you literally can tell the same story from like 4 different perspectives and get a new experience out of all of them if you really respect and honor the culture that you're turning that character into. And to that end, going like, okay, if we make a movie, a Green Lantern movie, and then we make 2 of those, and one of them is from one of the Green Lanterns and one is from the other Green Lantern's perspective, you can have 2 amazingly different stories that you're telling about the same character conceptually. So I really, really believe in that idea of like, don't just change the optics, like really explore the culture of that character. And you can really, truly tell an honestly different story just by shifting the decisions that a character is going to make based on their cultural lived experiences. And that's
I mean, even like the beginning of like the superhero genre, a lot of the like existence of superheroes, it ties really into like the Jewish American experience. Having a secret identity and like trying to like fit into like waspy white culture while also being like a different person. So like there's a lot about how human experiences and superheroes are very tied together.
Absolutely, and don't let's not limit them. I mean, I think what you were talking about earlier when we're looking at something like The Boys or Invincible, you're looking at heroes for a lot of them. You're looking at broken, flawed heroes, but you are looking at heroes. You're looking at these characters. You're looking at like I said earlier, I think it is examining the heroic story through the human experience, right? Like, and then vice versa, examining the human experience through the heroic story, and those sorts of things, and what that necessitates, right? Like, is real deep processing of what that means for you as the storyteller. Well, what can I do here to really bring home the identity of a character and what they're wrestling with and what they're struggling with, and that stuff to me is I revel in that. Like, I really enjoy the process. Right now we're in crazy heavy story mode on our movie, my brother and I, in development at DreamWorks, and it's constantly the wants and needs, constantly the wants and needs of these characters, the wants and needs of this villain, the wants and needs of the villager who they're going to be interacting with. Always asking those questions. If you really care about all of those layers of character detail, cultural, physical, mental, if you care about those things, you're asking those questions and really trying to answer them as you build out this story you're trying to tell. And so I love doing that. I love taking that idea with superheroes that we think we know and going like, man, what are some of the questions that we have not asked about this person? Like, and how can you take that and make it a new experience for the audience? That's super fun and gratifying for me.
Yeah, I think those make for really interesting stories.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask about this scene, it includes 3D models as background assets. In your opinion, what are some of the benefits and challenges that come with using 3D models and storyboards?
Man, honestly, it's pretty interesting because I hated the idea of SketchUp and all of these models. I hated it when I first started because it just felt like a time suck. It was just like, God, I gotta build this thing and that. Now,
so now on top of all your responsibilities as a storyboard artist and director, they're adding architect to that list.
Architecture. It is absolutely, and it was very tough at the beginning to really get into it and justify it and go like, you know what, like it's something that is necessary. Over time, what ended up happening is the marketplace started to be constructed for 3D assets, and so you're talking 3D models that are already built by other people, and I'm not using it for production, right? Like these are storyboards that our background designer can look at the rough layout of this background setup and just sort of go like, all right, well, I definitely want to have a building here, you know, like, and just use that as like the template for whatever it is that they're building for my background. Yeah. So what was cool about it was, okay, I can go into a marketplace, I can grab a base model, and then I can add little elements on top of it to fit the needs of what I'm trying to do. And so that was just that sort of alleviated that stress of, I need to spend time building every one of these models. And then also copy and paste definitely helped, made you go like, you know what, that building all the way back there, we're not looking at the details of it. We just need a building there. So copy and paste one of the ones you've already made. I am David Fincher obsessed. I've always been David Fincher obsessed. And for me, his methodology and sort of psychology about framing whenever you're doing a shot, right? Like, how is he drawing your eye to the character? How is he leading you through the story with the visuals? And so because of that, getting to a place where I can build a background and really start to dictate where I'm placing the models. I mean, when you're looking at the composition, you know, for a shot like this, you know, like having things in place that really appeal to me, right? Like having this dark, you know, spot here, you know, the big wall of these two front characters, and then the just balanced math of these three pillars, right? Things of that nature. I obsess over those little details. If I'm building a 3D model, I get to put those things in place and I get to use them over and over. Invincible is a 2D animated show with some 3D assets here and there. So when I cut to my next shot, when I'm hooking up from this shot to the next, that background has to be consistent. And so having a 3D model helps me stay consistent in that way. It gives me some limitations here and there, but it allows me to be consistent. It allows me to lay out some really cool shots. And now, you know, I can change the color of the sky back there. I can change the color of I can really use all these different elements to build the visuals that I want for the show or movie that I'm working on. For me, I'm like, I can't live without it now. I'm just like, I love building my models and getting the benefits of that. And then begging for forgiveness from my producers when my deadline is not met because I was modeling a bedroom. It feels worth it in the struggle for me.
Yeah, so one of the things that's really fun with like the way storyboarding works is that there are there are lots of different ways of getting the same effect. When you're working with 3D models, do you bring the models into Storyboard Pro or do you flatten them beforehand?
I flatten them beforehand.
Like images. Okay.
Yeah, I flatten them beforehand. You can see all my BG layers here. Yeah, what I do is I'll go through a 3D model and I'll take all of my snapshots for my background. So I literally will walk through the set and shoot like I'm shooting a film, you know, like a director will when they're doing set, you know, walking through a set. I'll walk through and do that very same thing, taking all of my shots, and then I'll open up my storyboard profile and import all of those shots as scenes, and then just start roughing basic rough on top of it, and sort of going like, oh, okay, you know what, this one doesn't work so much. Let me delete that. Let me go back into the same spot, take another shot of the better composition, and then drop that back in. So yeah, I definitely take the screenshots. I keep hearing there's a couple of guys I've seen importing the models into the Storyboard Pro, and I'm like, man, I need to figure that out. I keep working old school, man. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, there are benefits and challenges to using both approaches. Like when you bring in 3D models, you can rotate things around while you're making the boards.
Yeah.
Being able to flatten things means that you don't need to worry about stuff clipping through drawings. So there are definitely like benefits to both approaches.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, how much detail do you typically include when you storyboard action scenes? Like there's some movements where like you get into a lot of detail, almost the level of animation, and there's some that are a little bit more broad that give the animators a bit more leeway.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of different theories and principles that can be applied, right? Like for this one, you know, it's not much action going on here. The shot on his face, I can leave that rough just because I'm like, you know what the character's face looks like. You know, it's fine. For this one, I'm like, we're going close up. I like drawing the face. It was a quick, you know.
I get a little bit of the scowl going.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So
it's important. It's like character building scowl.
It's character building. Like we're going into the close up. We need to see how he feels, what he's thinking, you know. So
this is more of a grim, gritty hero as opposed to a wisecracking hero.
Exactly. And then when we go into these shots, right, I'm just trying to get the general pose down. Deadline means like I can't finesse or clean this up too much. But what I'm also thinking is in terms of animation, I want to give them a little bit of room to dictate what exactly this pose is. I figure as long as they can get a general idea, they can then go in and finesse it to a degree that won't break the idea that I'm setting up. And so this one here, a little more detailed than this one, because now I want to make sure they understand that the cape, he's doing a flip. So let me put the cape in front of him. Like, let me make sure that they see that he's rotating, you know, and then coming out of it. So it's sort of like you, as you're boarding it, again, for a shot like this, the most important element here was if I can get that eye right, then the rest of the face, they're going to be able to figure out exactly what I'm doing, no matter how rough the drawing is. And even if I sat and deleted that, you know, that circle, that, you know, they can see exactly what I'm getting at with that drawing. So you're sort of making the call as you go. For me, when it comes to action sequences, if I can get the general energy of a pose down, like if I can just make sure that when they're looking at the shot, they can get this general sort of like, what is this pose here? I feel like my job is done, right? I go with the clarity over cleanliness method. For certain poses and things of that nature, I'll go in and clean it up a little bit just to make sure that they have at least one marker, one reflection of that character's build, that character's outfit design. I at least give them one pose of that so that they can then go into the animating side of it. And then maybe 4 or 5 panels later, I'll give them another pose that's a little more cleaned up than the others. So this one here will be a little more cleaned up. This next one, you know, a little bit more. This one cleaned up because again, the marker here would be the pouches on the side of them. That's a good tracking point for them to go like, oh, okay, it's his waist. He's turned. You know, this pose, not so much. They get what this pose looks like. They get what this character looks like by this time. For this shot, again, if I can get that hand to be clear that he's going for that uppercut, job done, you know, moving on. And then this one, because I have his hand doing a little bit of an intricate thing, you know, he's going from this pose right into this pose, and it's all sped up pretty quick. I'm like, let me just make these as clean as possible without it getting too detailed, because there are some things that they're going to have to figure out. So it's sort of like whenever I'm boarding, I'm like drawing it, and then I'm flipping through and then seeing what it feels like, and then going back and then flipping. As you're doing that, you'll sort of start to feel, after a long time boarding, you start to feel like, you know what, that pose, that's not so clear. Let me go in and finesse that, or add a second one to that, or something like that. It is a gut thing. It really is a gut thing. That's weird. I hope that answered your question. It's my gut.
I think that definitely. And I think another question too is different productions look for artists with different types of skill sets. So if someone wants to storyboard for a show like Invincible, what skills would you recommend they work on?
I think I always say it, man, like, you don't want to be limited by your lack of knowledge or your lack of understanding. And so for an action show, you're going to be pushing characters, and they're going to be doing things and moving around, and you want to have an understanding of anatomy, like you want to have an understanding of anatomy, of if I were to turn my camera, which I can't because we haven't announced our movie yet, you'd see I literally on my wall here, I'm designing our villain for our movie, and just drawing him in different poses, drawing his hair from different angles and things of that nature. You definitely want to have as much knowledge as possible about how to draw anything from anywhere, right? Like, when I move my camera around something, can I understand how to execute the drawing that emphasizes where that camera is, right? So if I drop my camera onto the floor, do I know how to break anatomy down so I can draw that thing from an angle that feels like a cool upshot? That's like the base level understanding of a base level necessity for boarding on an action show like this. The thing that I would definitely probably emphasize even more than your drawing ability, I would say actually an understanding of that type of story. How do you understand story breakdown? How do you understand a 3-act structure? How do you understand setups and payoffs? And a lot of people, a lot of younger folk, they'll get onto a show like this and they're storyboarding all these crazy action moments, and it's sort of like, it's great if that's what the scene calls for, but there's 9,000 different kinds of a fight sequence, right? Like, there's a fight sequence where one person slaps the other person, and that other person looks at him a certain way and reacts with a backhand, and that backhand means something for the story. And you could look at that, and some folks will go like, oh, no, I know what can happen here. They can get each other in a chokehold, and one can flip over. It's like, no. This is the first act of the movie, right? Like, we need all of that energy for the third act. We need this first fight to be something emotionally driven. So this is not about a closed fist punch. This is about him slapping that other person because that means something, right? Like, so understanding story will begin to dictate the way that you execute your action sequences. And then, anatomy, understanding of how to break down, women, men, like body types of all sorts. And then also an excitement for exploring cool and interesting concepts, asking, like we were talking about earlier, asking questions about the characters that will help you arrive at an identity to build that could be interesting for the audience. Those are the things that I think now are going to take people to the next level of storytelling for the superhero genre, is how many questions can I ask about a character, and how many answers can I explore with their arc that's really going to feel interesting to our audience. That's the type of stuff that I think will take you to another level as a story artist on some of these action shows, superhero shows, for sure.
Yeah, Chris, to your point too, with the action scene that you just showed, the way that the character is fighting communicates things, right? Like, it informs us a lot about this character. Like, you could have had him do all kinds of different moves to take two people out, But you showed him fighting with finesse, and you showed him using gadgets and setting up things too, showing that he's like meticulous and he's someone who like relies on being tactical. As opposed to just like, you know, doing all kinds of cool kickflips and stuff.
No, I kept it I wanted to keep it very consistent. And the reason why I had him on top of that pillar at the beginning is because I wanted to have him flip off of it and go right into his run that I have him go into. That is setting up this idea like, oh, this guy is comfortable athletically. Like this is what he's gonna do. And so by the time we arrive at this moment where he, uses the Krav Maga to take the guy's leg off and, runs and does this flip to throw the handcuffs at him. Again, we've already set up early on that athletic. It's
believable.
Yeah, he's gonna. This is how he works. This is how he operates. And so it's like those different things. I can't do that if I'm not doing at least a basic study on body movement and different martial arts. I have to do some leg work and figuring out like, well, how would a person move like that when they have this cape and they have all these gadgets on them? How would they move? What would they do? What would make it feel believable in some way? Those things, you don't want that to be limited by your inability to draw something. You have to be able to go like, no, I feel I can explore mentally whatever I want because I feel very comfortable drawing whatever I come up with in my mind. That's a very important element that I think sometimes because people see my artwork and they go like, oh, he draws really well. He draws really pretty. I'm just like, man, I draw a lot. I have a big family, my 4 kids, my wife, I have a career, but I do not let a day pass by where I'm not at least drawing 2 to 3 hours a day. Like I got to get drawing in because it's my platform. It's the thing that I use to tell the stories that I want to tell. And so I can't get rusty in that regard. I do every week. I gotta freshen up because there'll be some time where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I haven't hit the table in 2 days. But I try to make sure that every day I get some hours in drawing. And when I don't, I feel it and I have to sit there and do the great mental reset where you're like, I'm gonna draw trash here for a few hours until I get back in that rhythm. Because I can't limit myself based on what I can and cannot do. I need to be maxed out in that regard. So draw a lot, draw a whole lot.
So speaking of drawing a lot, what do you enjoy most about the craft of storyboarding? What draws you to this?
I think it is that drawing side of it. There's something so amazing about figuring it out. Right? Like there's something so amazing about the blank canvas and you putting down that first thing and then putting down the second thing and then putting out that. Just something so amazing about doing all of that, looking at it all, seeing how terrible it is, and then going like, okay, let's start to move things around and figure it out. And then you figure out a little thing here, you figure out a little thing there, and then you push play on it again. And all of a sudden, you're not the director or the creator, you're the audience, right? When you push play on your storyboard, you're the audience. And then you're going, if I'm watching this movie, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I, if I'm my YouTube film critic and I'm like, well, how would I criticize this thing that I'm doing right now, that I'm creating right now? How can I change it, push it, make it better? And then you push stop on your storyboard and you go back in and start doing it. That is so gratifying to me, man. It just feels so amazing to have an idea, see it through, and build it all the way out, and then hand it over to people for them to consume. There's something so wonderful about that that I've grown to love over my 14 years in animation now. Which even saying that sounds ridiculous. But yeah, like that's my favorite part. And yeah, the drawing side of it. Like I used to get yelled at in school for drawing while the teacher was talking. And to now, like I committed to this thing. Black Thought, who's the rapper for The Roots, one of my favorite songs of all time they have on their album Things Fall Apart. The song is called it's Hip Hop, You the Love of My Life. And he talks about hip hop as this relationship, right? Like, you were the reason I left the house. I snuck out of the house at night. You were the reason I was standing on the corner with my homies. You were the reason I did school. And to me, art and my drawing is very similar in that way. Like, I put a ring on drawing a long time ago, and I said, I'm committed for my life. I'm going to be doing this thing, and sort of have a career now where doing that is the requirement for my career. It's a huge blessing, and I love that part of storytelling where I get to draw it out and figure it out through my drawings. Like, it never gets boring for me in that regard.
We have a little bit of time, so I wanted to ask you, we were talking earlier about one of your favorite scenes in the first season of Invincible. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that scene was and why you called dibs on it?
Yes, that was the baseball, the Mark and Omni Man baseball. Man, you know, let me try to. I'm gonna see if I can. I might have that storyboard.
That'd be amazing.
I think I have it. I need to find it. That scene, I mean, like I said, when I first saw the comic, I literally was just like, that sequence was so, I wish that I had this sequence. I'm going to lose my mind over it. That sequence was so, that moment in that comic book was so pivotal and amazing. And it impacted me in a really amazing way. I grew up in a fatherless home, right? And so my mom, you know, did the best. She actually introduced us to baseball in a very cool and fun way. But I remember that scene in the comic book because it just felt so grounded. It felt so like, you know, it's a dad talking to his son, essentially about puberty for a superhero, right? And there, you know, you've seen it in TV shows and you've seen it in movies where they're throwing the baseball to each other and having this, you know, heavy conversation. And I just remember seeing it in the comic book, and I remember the way that it starts off, the way this Corey Walker drew it. They start off back to back, and you're just sort of going like, are they throwing it over their shoulder to each other? Like, it just felt weird. I'm like, why did it? And then you realize that they're throwing the ball around the globe. And I just was like, it blew my mind. That was a level of storytelling that it unlocked something in my mind of like, man, how are we showing the things that we're trying to show? And I remember when I started on Invincible, and I said, I don't care who it is on this show. I don't care if God himself comes down and says, I'm fighting them. I need to storyboard out this throwing scene. Like, this is my scene. This is the reason why I love comic books, was that scene in the comic. And so it was really amazing being able to, I think I did like 3 or 4 different versions of that sequence. I storyboarded out 3 or 4 different versions. I'm going to find it here. You know what? Can I stop sharing screen for a second?
Sure.
Let me stop for 1 second, because I'm like, I know I have some NDA things on my desktop, and I'm like, I do believe that I have this sequence, and I'm very determined to open it up, because it was really fun. Again, with Invincible, we're literally taking a comic book that people have already read and they've already experienced it. Everybody who knows about Invincible as a comic book, they were gonna immediately know exactly what was about to happen in the show when this scene came up. But just going like, how can I, in a weird way, it's sort of like what I think The Last of Us is doing with the TV show now. It's going, something that you've read or seen already, how do we immerse you in the human experience of it? And for me, I was sort of trying to do that with this scene in Invincible. I was sort of going like, okay, how can I take the audience and immerse them in sort of the humanity of it? And so, yeah, here it is. you know,
I'm just gonna try to escape the sunbeam right now.
yeah, the sun is breaking into your place right now. So yeah,
It really is.
This this shot, I don't know why I drew the dog. I always hate when you're watching a movie or show or cartoon or something and the world feels naked and devoid of people. Like it in animation, because it's economic to not have a bunch of extra characters because you don't have to draw them. But I wanted to have some semblance of this is a real world. So then we pan across the front room. And then this was a shot I added in a little later on where, you know, it showing, you know, photos of Mark's childhood, him and Omni-Man. And then we rack focus to see them, again, the iconic comic book image, them standing back to back. Then we cut out to the wide shot and poof, you know, lands in the glove, pan over. And again, talk about clean and rough. Like here, this is the middle pose, so I'm just like, I don't get it. But I wanted to make sure that the face, because this is an emotional moment, if nothing else. But I just wanted to make sure that the faces were all pretty clear. So then Mark, again, and I wanted to just show, because he's deep in thought, he's trying to figure stuff out. So to cut to him and we see behind his head, you know, we're just keeping it in that place of, he's figuring stuff out, and the only turning he does, we barely see any of his face until he fully commits to the turnaround. And then Omni-Man rears it back and throws it. And of course, being a Chicago guy, I had to have Chicago first. You know, breaks through the mountains. And then we see it, you know, yeah, this is when I had it, you know, going through different rivers and crap in France. Poof. Mark catches it and throws it back past an airplane. This kid is like, you know, skipping over water. Poof. And then Omni-Man catches it. So yeah, this was an earlier, you can see the name of it even up there, Baseball A. This was one of the earlier versions of it. And then I go in and I go, like, you know, this one was really just setting up them throwing it and catching it, throwing it and catching it. Because once you have that moment, once you have that beat, then going in and, you know, taking and reusing some of these close-ups of their face is easy, right? Like that's the simple part. For me, I wanted to just get that. They're throwing it around the globe. How do we immerse the audience in that in any cool and interesting way? And it was a really fun scene that I'm still proud of and excited I got to do to this day.
It's such a great scene. Chris, where can our viewers follow you and find more of your work?
So I'm on Instagram more than anything. I'm at Chris Copeland Art, at Chris Copeland Art. And then on Twitter, I am at Chris Copeland RT. So it's the same thing. I tried to do Chris Copeland Art for my Twitter, but the ART was taken. So I just got rid of the A and it's just RT for retweet, I guess. So yeah, I'm there. That's where I spend most of my time is Instagram and Twitter.
Right. Well, thank you, Chris, for joining us today. And thank you to our audience for joining us for the Animation Trends event. The Animation Trends event is an online conference hosted by Toon Boom Animation. You can visit toonboom.com for details about interviews, panel discussions, and speed training courses. And we hope you tune in to the next discussion.
Thank you, guys.